Life has a funny way of making you think you have everything under control, especially when you're in the midst of it. It feels like you're playing your part, checking all the boxes, and checking in with the world around you. But sometimes, you don't realize that the routine you've gotten so comfortable in, the things you thought were normal, are actually just the quiet signs of a life that's slowly slipping away from you. It took me 12 years to realize how I'd allowed myself to disappear, how I had become a shadow in my own marriage. My name is Lisa, and I used to think I had the perfect life. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense, but perfect for me. Mark, my husband, was everything I thought I wanted: smart, successful, charming, and capable of making me feel important at one point. I was in my late 20s when we met, fresh out of college, eager to build a life, eager to find someone who shared my dreams and aspirations. When I found Mark, I thought I had it all figured out. Mark was 10 years older than me, and by the time we got married, he had already established himself as a senior executive at a reputable company in the city. He was the epitome of professional success, and I was eager to be by his side, to support him as we built our future together. At the time, I had dreams of my own. I wanted to be a designer, to create beautiful spaces, to have my name attached to something that left a lasting impression. I worked hard, building my career as a freelance designer, and though it wasn't glamorous, I loved it. It was fulfilling in a way that kept me busy and allowed me to feel a sense of independence. We had a nice life. Nothing extravagant, but comfortable. We lived in a cozy apartment downtown, spent weekends in local coffee shops, and traveled once a year to some new destination we'd both wanted to explore. We had everything we needed, or at least that's what I told myself. From the outside, everything appeared to be perfect, but the cracks were already there. I just couldn't see them. And even if I could, I didn't know how to confront them. The beginning of our marriage was filled with promises. Promises of love, stability, and support. But as the years went by, things started to shift. Mark's career was taking off, and that meant more hours at the office, more business trips, and less time for me. The first few times he came home late, I didn't think much of it. Work was demanding, and I understood that. But soon, it became a routine. His schedule shifted entirely. He became a stranger in his own home, someone who was always on the phone or behind closed doors, dealing with work matters. The worst part? I found myself becoming invisible. I tried to tell myself it was just a phase, that every marriage goes through its ups and downs, and this was just a rough patch. But deep down, I knew I was losing him. I didn't know how or when it happened, but slowly, I realized that I wasn't the center of his world anymore. And for the first time in our marriage, I began to feel alone, deeply alone. There were days when I would sit in the quiet of our apartment, feeling the weight of silence pressing down on me. Mark would be in his office, working late again, and I would be left to watch television I wasn't interested in, scrolling mindlessly through social media or reading books that no longer sparked my curiosity. Our conversations had become shallow, nothing more than exchanges of daily tasks. Did you pick up the dry cleaning? Don't forget about dinner with the Johnsons on Friday. Can you handle the lawn service? I don't have time. That was it. That was our connection. Nothing deep, nothing meaningful. I had become just another part of the routine, just another to-do on Mark's endless list. Mark's new promotion only seemed to widen the gap between us. He was traveling more, attending conferences, and suddenly his job seemed to be his #1 priority. I tried to tell myself that this was normal, that this is what happened after years of marriage. The excitement fades, the passion ebbs away, and you just learn to get by. But somewhere, deep inside, I felt a void growing, a longing for the connection we once had. I felt like I was living a life that was no longer mine, and I couldn't figure out how to get it back. I watched as Mark became increasingly distant, his focus entirely on his career, while I tried to hold on to the life we had built together. It wasn't enough to just be his wife. I needed more. I needed to feel seen, needed to know that I mattered, not just as an accessory to his success, but as an individual with my own passions and dreams. But as I sat there, in our quiet apartment, I realized that I had lost myself in the process. I had sacrificed my own aspirations for the sake of a marriage that was slowly slipping away from me. It was around this time that I stumbled upon something that would change everything. It was a sleepless night, the kind that drags on endlessly, when I came across an advertisement for a language learning app. I'd always been fascinated by languages, but when Mark and I got married, I put my own interests aside to focus on our life together. But that night, something inside me stirred. The ad was for Japanese, a language I had studied briefly in college, a language I had fallen in love with back then. I remembered how much I had enjoyed it, how it had opened up a new way of thinking for me. I had always dreamed of going to Japan, immersing myself in the culture, learning the language fluently. But life had gotten in the way, and I had shelved that dream. But now, lying in bed beside Mark as he slept, I felt something shift inside me. I downloaded the app on a whim, just to see if I could remember anything. To my surprise, it all came rushing back. The hiragana characters, the katakana, the basic phrases, they all returned to me as though no time had passed at all. Within a few weeks, I was hooked. The more I practiced, the more alive I felt. I felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself I hadn't realized I had lost. As Mark continued to work late and travel for business, I spent my evenings in a different world. I sat at the kitchen table with my headphones on, working through lessons, practicing speaking with online tutors, and watching Japanese dramas with subtitles. Over time, I started to feel more and more connected to that version of myself, the person I used to be before Mark's success had taken over our lives. I wasn't hiding it from him, per se, but I had learned not to share the things I was passionate about.
It was easier that way.
I had learned to let go of my dreams for the sake of our marriage, and I wasn't about to risk being dismissed again. Not after what happened when I had shared my interest in photography a few years ago. One day, Mark casually mentioned that he had been working closely with our Tokyo office and had learned a bit of Japanese over the years. I was shocked. It had never occurred to me that he might be interested in it. But there he was, talking about how he had picked it up for work, how it was helping him in his job. He didn't even ask if I spoke Japanese, didn't wonder if I might have any knowledge of it. In his mind, I was just the wife who would smile and look nice at business dinners, who would nod politely and play my part.
He never asked about me.
Not really. That was when I realized how far we had drifted. Mark's life, his work, his ambitions, they had all become the center of our marriage, and I had become nothing more than a bystander in my own life. I had let go of so many things, my dreams, my passions, for the sake of a life that was slipping away from me. But I wasn't going to do it anymore. Japanese had become my secret world, my personal escape. It was something just for me, something that gave me back a sense of independence and identity that I had lost over the years. I began to practice more, sometimes for hours each day. I took online classes, joined study groups, and even started reading simple Japanese novels. I was getting really good at it. I didn't tell Mark, not because I was hiding it, but because I had learned to keep my interest to myself. What had once been a secret hobby had become a way for me to reclaim my own voice, my own sense of self. And I was doing it all quietly, in the background of my marriage, because it was the only place where I could still find peace. The more I practiced, the more I realized that I wasn't just learning a new language, I was rediscovering who I was. Every new word I learned, every grammar rule I mastered, felt like a tiny victory over the life I had been living for so long. I was still someone. I was still capable of growth. I was more than just Mark's wife. And that, more than anything, became my greatest source of strength. The weeks leading up to the dinner were filled with a strange sense of anticipation. Mark seemed to be acting differently, more energized, more eager. He spoke about the dinner with Tanaka-san with a level of excitement that I hadn't seen in him for months. He was practically buzzing with the news of this big potential deal. "This is huge for us, Lisa," he said one evening as he walked in, his tie loosened from a long day at the office. "If this partnership goes through, it could change everything for the company. And I need you there with me." I wasn't sure how to feel about it. Part of me wanted to say no, to turn down the invitation, to not go and play my role as the perfect wife anymore. But another part of me knew that this dinner was more than just a dinner. It was an opportunity, a chance to see Mark in a way I never had before, a chance to see how he really felt about me when he didn't think I could understand him. And so I agreed, without hesitation. Mark didn't know that I was now fluent in Japanese, but he also didn't seem to care. He told me, in a casual tone, that I would need to look nice and smile, but that I wouldn't be expected to contribute much to the conversation. Tanaka-san doesn't speak much English, so I'll be doing most of the talking, Mark explained. You'll probably be bored, but just smile through it. It's good optics. He turned to me with a quick smile, as if trying to soften the blow of his words. I smiled back, trying to mask the hurt I felt in that moment. The night of the dinner arrived. I put on the navy dress Mark had chosen, paired it with modest heels, and styled my hair just so, exactly how he wanted me to look. I was the perfect picture of a wife who knew her place. I felt like an actress in a play I didn't audition for. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just the decorative wife anymore. I had learned something that he didn't know. I could understand everything he said. I would hear him, not as the man I thought I knew, but as someone else, someone I'd never truly heard before. The restaurant was upscale, modern, and as expected, Mark used the company account to secure a reservation. We arrived 15 minutes early, and Mark was already checking his appearance, straightening his tie, running over last-minute details in his mind. Tanaka-san, the CEO from the Japanese tech company, was already seated when we arrived. He stood to greet us, smiling politely, his presence calm and confident. He was well-dressed, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, his silver-rimmed glasses gleaming as he bowed slightly. I bowed back, keeping my face neutral, just as I had been trained to do. We were seated, and the conversation began with basic pleasantries. Tanaka-san complimented the restaurant choice and asked if this was our first time hosting international partners. I nodded politely, smiling as they switched to Japanese. Mark spoke fluently, his words smooth and confident. It was clear that he was comfortable in this environment, that this language was now a part of him, a part of the identity I had never truly known. I sat quietly, sipping my water, listening, observing. The conversation was business, as expected. They discussed projections, market strategies, the latest technological advancements. Mark spoke confidently about his role in the company, the partnerships he was negotiating. He was impressive, I had to admit. But there was something about the way he spoke, a confidence that bordered on arrogance, that didn't sit right with me. It was as though he was painting a picture of himself that was more grandiose than I had ever imagined. And then it happened. Tanaka-san, after a few moments of casual conversation, turned to me and asked something in Japanese. I caught it easily. He was asking what I did for work. Mark, without skipping a beat, answered for me. Oh, Sarah works in marketing, but it's just a small company, nothing serious, he said in Japanese. More of a hobby, really. Keeps her busy. His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. A hobby? I had been working in marketing for years. I had managed multiple campaigns, built successful client relationships. Yet here he was, dismissing my career as something unimportant, something that didn't matter. I felt my face flush, but I kept my smile intact. I nodded, as if nothing had changed. But inside, everything shifted. I was no longer just the woman who played the role of wife. I was hearing the truth that Mark had never spoken to me in English, the truth that he didn't value me, didn't respect me, didn't even see me for who I was anymore. I was just a prop in his life, there to make him look good, to keep the house in order, to smile and nod at the right times. The dinner continued, and I sat in silence, listening, observing. Mark continued to talk, bragging about his role in the company, inflating his achievements. But it wasn't just the boasting that bothered me. It was the casual way he dismissed me, how he treated me like an afterthought. He was so engrossed in impressing Tanaka-san that he didn't even notice the subtle shifts in the conversation. Then, the worst part came. Tanaka-san mentioned something about work-life balance, asking Mark about the role family support played in his career. Mark chuckled lightly, a sound that made my skin crawl. To be honest, he said in Japanese, his voice dripping with casual disdain, my wife doesn't really understand the business world. She's content with her simple life. I handle all the important decisions, the finances, the career planning. She's just here for appearances, really. Keeps the house running, looks good at events like this. It works well for me because I don't have to worry about a wife who demands too much attention or has her own ambitions getting in the way. Those words, they shattered something inside me. I had spent so many years building my life, building a career, and here he was, reducing me to nothing. I was just a face, a smile, a wife who was there to make him look good, to serve his needs. Everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, meant nothing to him. I sat there, frozen, while Mark continued talking. Tanaka-san made a polite noise, but he didn't challenge Mark. It was clear that he wasn't comfortable with what Mark was saying, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he shifted the conversation back to business. I kept my smile fixed on my face, even as my heart broke. I knew, in that moment, that this dinner wasn't just about a business deal. It was about Mark revealing who he really was, how little he thought of me, how little he valued me. And then, it got worse. Mark, as if everything he had just said wasn't bad enough, casually mentioned something about his long-term goals. He spoke about moving into the C-suite, about his plans for the future, and then, as though it were no big deal, he mentioned his offshore accounts. He was moving money around, he said, in preparation for a big move. Just smart financial planning, he said, as if it were nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was a sign that he was preparing for a future without me, or at least a future where I would have no say. The worst part was hearing about Jennifer. He spoke of her with a certain fondness, describing how they had been seeing each other for 6 months. He said, "She understands my world, my ambitions. It's refreshing to have someone to talk to about strategy, to make plans with." He didn't even mention me. Not once did he refer to me as his wife in a meaningful way. I was just there in the background while he made plans for his life with someone else. I felt like I was going to be sick. I sat there, my hands shaking, my heart racing, but I couldn't move. I had learned so much that night, more than I ever wanted to know. I had learned that Mark didn't just see me as a wife. He saw me as a burden, something to be discarded when it no longer served his purpose. And that realization hit me harder than anything else. The man I had spent 12 years with, the man I had loved, had been lying to me, had been planning a future that didn't include me. The dinner ended, and we made our way home in silence. Mark seemed pleased with how things had gone. "That went well," he said, humming to himself as he parked the car. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. Inside, I was dying. I felt as if everything I had known, everything I had believed in, had just been ripped away from me. The life I had built, the marriage I had given everything to, had been nothing but a lie. That night, after Mark went to his office to catch up on emails, I sat alone in our bedroom. I didn't know what to do. I felt lost, betrayed, and broken. But I also felt something else, something stronger. I felt a determination rising in me. I was not going to let this go. I was not going to let Mark take everything from me. It was time to take control of my life, to reclaim who I was. And I would do whatever it took to make that happen. The next day, I called Emma. My best friend from college, a family law attorney, had always been a steady presence in my life. I hadn't confided in her about Mark and our marriage before, but now I needed her. I needed help.